So let's get into our first hack, the developer toolkit. And here we're going to get really, really practical. So that we're actually now on page 29 of the workbook. So go and have a look in there if you have not already. And we're going to cover the 5 top development tools first. So let's just get moving into that. So firstly, in terms of my, I actually asked a question for you. So for those of you there, what do you think are the top 3 tools a developer uses? I'd like to see, before I share with you what I use, what do you think they might be? So let's see in the chat box what you think they could possibly be. So do we have any people prepared to put it out there and tell me what you think the 3 key tools are? We've got anyone up there? We've got, surely one of you might have been listening earlier because I gave you a bit of a hint early on about what some of the tools are. What have we got? Realestate.com, Andrew? Yeah, that's certainly one of the tools. The top 3 tools, they're not quite in the top 3 though. The FESOs, yeah, absolutely. Checklist DA feasibility Zach, checklist Paul, they're all amazing answers. But you know what, it's even simpler than that. The top 3 tools, let's move on and have a look what they are. Builder real estate agents, bank, yeah, for sure, Chris. That's part of that. So, look, the main tools are, we go back, your mobile phone, your computer and a notebook. It's as simple as that. There's no sophistication here. You have those 3 tools. They're the key tools in your developer toolbox. So if you think like a builder or any trade, how many tools they've got to carry on themselves and the weight of all those tools as well. Us as developers, simple. You're carrying around your phone most of the day, and look, you could do most of your work on your phone, but I quite like a bigger screen. You've got your computer and a notebook. I like to write things down. My brain processes things pretty easily. We've still got people on all the tech tools, the RP Data and the Funding Memo Kimberly and Funding Brian and RP Data Lisa. Yeah, look, they're all tools and we're going to cover that. But the 3 main tools you need, your mobile phone, your computer and a notepad. Very, very simple. So let's get on to a few more tools as well. So what about software? And a few of you have mentioned some of the software already. So let's get into sharing with you the main software tools that I use. So if we go on to the next one. So development tools, I'm just going to cover some of these. Development tools, laptop, notebook. Realestate.com, we certainly had, I think Andrew mentioned that. So realestate.com and Domain, that's where most people tend to, when you think about looking for a property, you generally go to those tools. So that's also, I find realestate.com and Domain, I mean, Domain doesn't really get used much in South Australia. It certainly does in the eastern seaboards, but in my state it's mainly realestate.com. I find that really it's free, as we all know, but it's a really useful tool because it gives you an idea of where the market's at. So you have RP Data and Pricefinder, which are paid subscriptions, and they're amazing as well. But you still need to go back to the free tool because that's where the general market go and look for properties. So when you are doing your research on what property is selling for and how much stock on the market there is in the market, that's where the realestate.com is key, and it's really, really useful to do that. So I also find, so when I mentioned before, trying to work out, where your first home buyers are, where, investor grade stock might be, you'd look on realestate.com and get a feel for price points in there. And it's also really good for realestate.com because you can start to get a feel on your competition out there, but you can also start to get a feel for what needs to be included in your stock to be able to get a certain price point. So it's funny, once you get trained to look for certain things, your perspective on looking at realestate.com will certainly change. So when I work through deals, like I'm looking at a property, but my eyes are scanning everywhere. I'm scanning for, the type of light switches they're using, what sort of height tiling they've got, all those little 1%ers, because that's really what helps sell your property, but it also helps define your price point. And that's something I certainly cover in detail in terms of the learning that I teach as well. So we've got Pricefinder and RP Data, so they're paid subscriptions, and they're really good to understand information around what other properties are sold for. You can get some of that information in realestate.com, but not everything. So basically in Pricefinder and RP Data, every single sale that gets made gets stored into these big databases behind the scenes. So when I'm looking for a deal, I'll always generally be in realestate.com first, and then I'll flick over to RP Data. I've used both RP Data and Pricefinder. They're both pretty similar. And then I'll type in the address, and then you can find in there, you know, what that house sold for, when it's sold for, how big it is, how many times it's been on the market, has it been rented. Like all that background story on that property is all housed within tools like RP Data and Pricefinder. So, you know, when you start really getting active in development, they're really key tools to use. And I mean, I'm part of a shared subscription, so you can go and join up to these tools. You can get a free trial for most of these tools to give them a try and look around. Otherwise, you can also share subscriptions. So I know within the Inner Circle there's a number of people. Yeah, there's Archistar. Yeah, Archistar's another good one. Thompson or Johnson? I'm not sure if you put your Thomas or Johnson, sorry. Yeah, Archistar is a really good one. It's really expensive though. I know they're looking at adjusting their pricing. Archistar's got some really, really clever almost architectural tools in the background. So that's actually also linked to a tool called Cordels, which has a lot of the building price information plugged into. But yeah, it's Johnson. Awesome, thank you for correcting me. So that Archistar is a good tool. And look, all of these tools, whether it's Archistar or Pricefinder or RP Data, you might Stash, you can hear a number of different types of them. They do the same sort of thing, and you can get as complicated or as simple as you like. As you know, I like to keep things simple, so I mainly use a tool for understanding the sales information, sales history information, particularly what the house last sold for and when. And then I use a mapping tool, like the satellite mapping tool, and you can also use things like Google Maps as well. But the thing I love about the paid tools is it's got, you can just measure distances and see the square meterage and all those sort of tools. So the first thing I'll do is look at the history, and then I'll go into the mapping. So I'll look around the area, see what other development has happened in the area as well. I'll look at the street view, so I can see what the neighbouring houses look like and get a feel for the street. And that's the amazing thing. You know what? You can do that from the comfort of your own home. So, which is great. So I do that, and then RP Data or Pricefinder, either or, whichever's most cost effective. They're both great tools. And then council websites. Now, council websites are critical in terms of understanding what you can and can't do with your site. So you can go directly to the council website if you know where the zoning is. Each state tends to have another tool where you can type in an address and it will tell you the zoning and the council that that particular house falls in. And there's different sites for those around the country. And I use that tool all the time. And then you go to the council website and then look at the development plan. And the development plan is quite a meaty document, hundreds of pages. And if you want some bedtime reading, certainly go and download it and read it. There's always typically only 1 or 2 pages that are really relevant to you. And once you know the zoning of a particular site, and Brendan's going to cover a fair bit of this in the expert session later on as well, when he starts looking for deals live in his session. Once you actually understand what you can and can't do on a site, you get the parameters in those 1 or 2 pages in the development plan. And then if you want to be even, keep life even more simple, ring up the duty planner, and the duty planner and go, here's my address that I'm looking at, what can I do on it? You get quite a generic answer because they can't actually tell you everything exactly to do on that site, because they don't want to be saying, okay, well, it's a 3 site and then there might be some issue and it's only a 2 site, and then, it could put them in hot water. But I think certainly when you're starting out, have those conversations with the duty planner. Look at the main 2 pages of the zoning within that council area. And then as you start to get more confident and start to read between the lines a bit and understand the different parameters within the council, that's when you can start finding little loopholes which can enable density that other people might not realise. So for example, in an area that I've been playing in a lot, there's a couple of zones where they'll have one zoning. So this is a generic zoning here, which might mean you can put, say, 2 on the site. But then if you're within 400 metres of a transport hub or a shopping centre or a precinct, then the zoning, you can get even more on it. So once you know those little quirks, that really differentiates you from the every person that's out there that doesn't actually know those little quirks, and you learn that. So Catherine's asked in terms of, can you please give the name of the sites? So in SA, it's Location SA. I don't have the zoning sites for me for the other states as well. I'll have to get back to you on those ones. And Jonathan's asked, how much info do you need to determine whether a site is good for development? Well, once you actually understand an area, so I certainly, when I work with my students, I teach them around really firstly identifying the right deal for you, but then also working out your deal belt. And that's really understanding an area where the density is where the numbers make sense really. So once you understand the numbers behind a deal, which is super critical in terms of doing your feasibility, and then what you can and can't do with the site, and that can be as simple when you're starting out as understanding the square meterage for a site and the frontage. So depending on what you're planning to do, whether it's a multi-res dwelling or a row dwelling, most of the council websites have really good guides in there about the different categories of development. So that's something to look at anyway as well. So, but yeah, you certainly want to do your research before you buy a development, because you need to understand the numbers behind it and you need to understand whether that site meets the development plan, 2 critical things in working out whether it's a good development or not. So in terms of key business tools, so when you've got the development side of it, but you've also got a business, when it comes to feasibility. So you've got Excel or Google Sheets, which every single one generally has those. I don't go super sophisticated. You can buy development programs, software and stuff like that. You know what, I keep it simple. There's a number of main criteria when it comes to crunching a deal. I created an Excel spreadsheet for my feasibility, which I share with my Inner Circle members, and then I share with them in terms of who to go to get that information when they're building up their first feasibility, and then we just use that, and then you tweak it depending on how your mind thinks. So it's all about keeping it simple. So yeah, Excel, Google Sheets, the business tool, Dropbox, Google or OneDrive, having a shared drive to put all of your information on there. So what I do is with my members, I share with them my whole folder structure, because you want to try and keep yourself as organised as possible so that you can keep your head clear to focus on other more important things. So I use a generic folder structure where everything is got its own little place, even down to my bookkeeper having access to one folder. So MyOb or Xero, they're really important tools, subscription-based tools to use to manage the business side of it. Because you've got to remember, development, there's the development side of it, but you've also got the business side of it, which is equally important. And what I do with my members is I teach them all the fundamental bouncing ball stuff with development, but I also teach them the business side of it, because you need to understand that to help you, give you that holistic view of how to run a development business. So yeah, so I have bookkeeping links for my bookkeeper just to go straight into everything using Dropbox or Google or OneDrive, whichever is, wherever you want to store all your information. And so yeah, MyOb Xero, really important when you're doing all your bookkeeping, especially when you're doing development, you have GST and things like that. And yeah, put it all in one place. I also pay myself as an employee, so I have that all managed. I use MyOb. I think MyOb and Xero. I think Xero's, they both probably equally do the same sort of thing, depending on the cost and which platform you like using. They're both great. Thank you, Andrew. Andrew shared the Victorian way of searching for sites. That's brilliant. If someone has a New South Wales one, that would be awesome to post that in as well. So that's and Facebook and Instagram. They're good tools from a sales perspective as well, but also just keeping an eye on other product competitive market out there. But also it's a great way to connect with potential purchasers, but also with potential sellers of their houses as well. So that's probably, an underestimated business tool. I also use Facebook and Instagram as a business tool in terms of promoting my business, my development business, because what you're going to find is, for people who are going to purchase your sites or purchase your homes that you're selling, quite often they'll Google that, they might ask who the developer is and they'll Google it. So you want to make sure that you're pitching yourself as a professional business, and by having a presence on Instagram and Facebook just means, and a website, just means when people Google you, they know that you're a legit business, and they're really super simple to set up. Let's keep it, I always try and keep it very, very basic. Got a couple of questions here I'll cover off. So Jonathan's asked, when starting out, how do you fast track your due diligence, especially when sites aren't on the market for long? That's a great question, Jonathan, and that's all about doing your work up front. So when I certainly encourage my students to paper trade deals. So when you're looking for deals, the first deal you look at is not necessarily going to stack up. It can take quite a few deals to work through before you find the one that stacks up. So as you're working through those deals, you're building up your feasibility. And then after a while, once you've built up all the numbers in your feasibility, then you're just tweaking, mainly the purchase price and your sell prices, and maybe your build cost depending on how many dwellings you're building. You build that up, and then after a while, it takes like 2 or 3 minutes to do a feasibility. But you do need to do the work in terms of building up that feasibility with your numbers based on your location and wherever it is that you're developing. But once you've done that, it's really super, super simple. And then other questions. Is it best to just develop in the state you're living in? Nicole, that is a super good question. Up to you. You can develop easily in another state. I've built some houses in Queensland. I built locally mainly because it's easy for me. I keep it simple. I found an area that works, and I just rinse and repeat. But you can easily develop in other states. I certainly know that some people in the inner circle are also looking in Adelaide as well, or other states and smaller hubs. So you can really look anywhere, because if you think about it, the process that I'm teaching, a lot of it can be done by a desktop. And then if you need someone to go on the ground, then you can just engage someone to actually go on site, or you can fly up there and have a look at it. So really, you're only limited by your own comfort level and capacity in terms of where you can develop. You really can develop anywhere. It just means building the team around you, so you've got people on the ground to do some of the legwork stuff there if you need to. So in terms of key online tools, you can use a notebook. I also use something like Evernote or OneNote. I'm sure there's some other amazing tools out there that you can use. And I just use that as a brain dump. So just writing all my to-do list. So I'm a big planner, so I'll have at the end of every single month, I will map out where, I have my longer term plans, but then I break things down to months, and that helps drive my activity for the week. And I just find it easy to do that in Evernote. And then for my month end, I try to get as much stuff out of my head and onto a paper or onto a screen as possible, so that when I have to do something, I just go, okay, here's my list, and then just work through the checklist. And it just declutters your mind. We're all busy people. We've all got a lot juggling, in our lives. As much as you can get out of your head onto a paper, they're still going to help you, but you don't actually need to have it in your hard drive. And I just use Evernote for that. So I'll just search, for example, on a month end. I've got a little table where I go, okay, I need to do these spreadsheets, I need to do this in MyOb, I need to download these bank statements, and then I just go check, 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 check. No thinking, I just do it, and it becomes automated and it's simple. So you can choose to do that as a notepad or use an online tool. Asana and Trello, they're online project management tools. Completely up to you if you want to use those. They're not compulsory. You can get free versions or paid versions. And with all the stuff that I'm teaching you, take what you need and what works well with you. So my brain thinks in a certain way, and I'll have certain tools that help me go through my process. But you might not want to do Asana. You might just want to do something written, and that's okay too. I'm just opening your mind into other tools that are out there. So let's go on to the next one. Upwork and Fiverr. You may or may not have heard of these, but these are basically global freelancing websites. So if you want to get a website done or get some photorealistic renders done for your sales, or I've even used Upwork to have people look for deals for me. So you can outsource as much as you want. And I know Al in his session talked about leverage. I leverage as much as I can, and you can pay someone very cheaply to go and do some tasks for you, whether it's having a virtual assistant through these amazing global platforms. So that's Upwork or Fiverr. Check those out. And there's Canva. So all the graphics that I've done in today's event which I hope you're enjoying. They're all done on Canva, really, really simple. You don't have to be a graphic designer to create beautiful looking collateral. So I use Canva as well to even create project logos, business logos, marketing documents. So go on, if you want to make a birthday invitation, whatever you want to do, personal or business, that's an amazing free tool as well. So you can certainly use that. So yeah, look, my key message is here, keep life simple. So everything I'm teaching you, take what you need and work out what works with you and what doesn't. And hopefully some tools there, help make your life a bit simpler too. So really that's all it is. It's actually quite complicated. There's no, super complicated websites or new super complicated tools that you need. Let me know in the chat box, who likes to keep life simple? I certainly do. So that's I hope you find some value out of that. I've had some questions here around, how do you find your first good architect and builder? Really look, word of mouth, drive around, go and have a look at signs around you, and go and speak to some people. Speak to people you know who've done development before. Word of mouth is a really good one. Real estate agents, use network around you and just keep asking for referrals. And if you start hearing the same name a couple of times, then, generally you've got a good recommendation there.